The topic of abortion is one that is wrought with a lot of confusion, but also a lot of emotion, and rightfully so. So from the beginning of today's episode, I want to extend a hand of grace and love to anyone who's been affected by this. This podcast is not meant to be condemning or anything like that, and as you listen, you will see that for yourself. But I do want to start this episode by saying that up front, because my guest on the show, Alison Centofante, who is the Director of External Affairs at Live Action, which is a pro-life media movement, she is going to expose a lot of lies about the abortion industry and about Planned Parenthood and different things surrounding this topic. And she's going to pull no punches, but she does so in a loving, gracious way. And at the end of the day, she's speaking the truth. And so I hope you'll find it informative, but also beneficial and reconciling if you've been affected by this issue. Listen all the way through. It ends on a really good note. I think you'll definitely enjoy it. But I was extremely happy to have Alison come on. It was a topic that I think is very important that we address. Not only as American citizens, but also as Christians. I think it's important for us to stand up for this issue, stand up on this issue, and speak the truth, and to do so in a loving, winsome way. And I think Alison does a great job of that, as well as all the folks over at Live Action. Before we get into the episode, I want to remind you that if you want to watch the bonus segment, 5 more minutes with Alison Centofante, you can follow the description in the link below and head on over to our Patreon page and become a supporter of our ministry. If you're listening via podcast, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Leave us a review if you're on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe over there as well, guys. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Help Me Believe. My name is Haden Clark, your host, and I am excited to introduce my special guest to you. She is the Director of External Affairs at Live Action, a pro-life media movement, and her name is Alison Centofante. Alison, how are you doing today?
I'm really well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. I'm sure you've got a busy schedule there over on the East Coast in D.C. How is it over there?
It's good. It's really good. We're just trying to save the world one day at a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's been busy.
Yeah, well, that's great. I've never been to the East Coast, so I don't really know, what it's like or what to expect. It's the weather here in Texas has been pretty crazy. Is it pretty cold, or was it warm over there? What's it like?
I have been to Texas. I like Texas. It's been all over the place, honestly. It's we woke up in the middle of the night last night. Tons of rain, but April showers bring May flowers, maybe. Yeah. So we'll see.
So it's not just here that the weather's all sorts of crazy, but
Mm-hmm.
Well, for those who are not familiar with who you are, maybe you could give us a brief introduction, just kind of who you are, what your background is, and what you do over at Live Action.
Sure. Well, thanks. I am 30 years old. I live here outside of Washington, D.C., and I work for a group called Live Action. It's a nonprofit dedicated to ending abortion and supporting women in unplanned pregnancies, and I love the work I am doing. I have stories of abortion in my own family, and I just can see how first learning about the reality of it set me on a trajectory to dedicate my life to it. And having met so many women and men that have experienced it really affected me. So I decided that this is what I wanted to talk about, the truth, the reality, the support. Before this, I worked at other nonprofits here in DC, all wonderful. They were all pro-life, and I just loved marketing, communications, the PR around this, right? Because the way we talk about things is the way we feel about things, and that's what the world sees. So I like to think that I'm involved in media and communications, PR, getting better every day at that, hopefully. And I've loved it. I lived in the city for about 7 years since I graduated college, and did not expect to be a Washington, D.C. person.
Yeah.
Don't judge me for it, but hopefully I'm trying to.
Where did you go to college?
So I actually went to school down at Liberty University.
Oh, okay.
I went to public school my whole life in New Jersey, and the idea of going to a faith-based school was actually really welcoming. I felt great about it, and I loved my experience down there. So I made some of my best Christian friends and got to struggle with, actually figuring out what Christian community looked like. And that was actually my first encounter with this issue, Haden. We invited Norma McCorvey, who's Jane Roe in Roe v. Wade, to come speak. And I grew up in the church. I thought I was pro-life, but I had never, ever heard a woman talk about what she talked about. And she actually is now pro-life and never had an abortion. She gave her baby up for adoption. And that changed. It was amazing. It was amazing to hear the stories. And then the university, so many people had their stories as well. So oddly enough, I work for a woman named Lila Rose now. And when we had Norma McCorvey down at Liberty, we titled the week Rose, no connection, Reclaiming Others' Sacred Existence was our goal to talk about that.
Well, that's really awesome. So what exactly is live action? What is the purpose? What's kind of the history, and when did you get involved with it?
Yeah, it has a really cool story. So it was started by a woman named Lila Rose, like I said, when she was about 15. She was in her parents' living room, and she opened a book that showed what an abortion was. She saw a victim of an abortion procedure, and that stuck with her, and she started talking about it with friends. And when she went to college in California, this followed her, right? She was like, okay, I'm at college. A lot of women are sexually active, but there's no one pregnant. What's going on? Mm-hmm. So she went into the health center and said, hey, what if I think I'm pregnant? And they said, well, we'll get you an abortion. Wow. She goes, surely this is an outlier. So Lila started going around to other health clinics on campuses, and then eventually to Planned Parenthoods, because they're the largest abortion provider, just to see how they counseled pregnant women. And she actually took an undercover camera in. This was before everyone had an iPhone and before everyone had a camera, and caught them on camera lying to her about how far along she would be. And they actually got onto her. They kind of knew she was doing it, so she had to get friends to go. And this is the formation of live action, is saying, we want to expose the abortion industry for what it is. And it's a profit-based model that doesn't rely on a woman being empowered to make a true and honest, informed choice. It involves deception. And so live action grew from that small group of friends exposing the abortion industry. Some of that media picked it up, and it started the whole push to defund Planned Parenthood, to talk about better options for women. And now we've grown into one of the nation's largest pro-life organizations. Super proud of it. We have almost 4 million followers on social media, almost 500,000 people on email following what we're doing every day. And our goal is to end abortion, to expose the abortion industry. And we're doing that by reaching people online. That's where we get our news. That's where we all live, unfortunately. And so that's where you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, every day, debating the issues of the day. And right now it's huge. It's every day there's something going on. I actually just got a text from our social media guy that Bernie Sanders endorsed abortion through birth in a town hall today. Wow. So it is in the news, and we are excited to be talking about it.
That's a neat story of how everything kind of worked out, and how Lila managed to do all that. So how did you become affiliated or acquainted with Lila or live action, or how did that kind of work out?
Yeah. So I'd worked with Lila in the past and spoken at different press conferences and such. I was very impressed by her always. It's really neat when you meet another young woman who's dedicated and knows exactly what she wants her life to be about. And I joined about a year ago, actually, almost a year ago exactly, and started getting to work on taking these 3 million people and getting them informed even further on what happens, because this is what changes people's hearts and minds. We know, we look at the data, we look at the abortion procedures. When we go out and we ask people, would you consider yourself pro-life, pro-choice, or neither? They automatically usually say, pro-choice, or something like, well, I'm personally pro-life, but I don't think I should say if someone else should be pro-life. Right. Like, okay, can you just watch this 3-minute video of an abortion procedure and let us know your thoughts? And they're like, great. I've done this in Times Square, Haden, and I'm terrified that people are going to throw the iPad down and freak out. They don't. They're really interested. So they put it on, the headphones, and they watch a medical animation of what takes place. They watch the whole thing and they're like, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we teaching this in schools? Why don't I know this? You should make sure legislators know this before they vote on this. I mean, it's incredibly eye-opening. And so it's changing people's hearts and minds when they see the procedure. And then secondly, I would say when they see inside the abortion clinic. Not many people will go in. Lila has, we have. And when we can talk about how women are treated in there, it changes people's minds. Like, no one should be deceived like that. No one should be pressured. We know most of these women are facing a lot of pressure. And especially for young girls, they're sitting there in a room with someone who looks like a medical doctor saying, you have to do this today. It'll save you money to do this today. And no one, I just spoke with a really amazing woman this weekend. She said, I was 16, Planned Parenthood refused to show me the ultrasound. They said I had to do it today. And she lived with that for the rest of her life. She's just finally now talking about it. So we know we are changing. I think on this issue, I don't know your experience, but you assume people already have decided where they are.
Right.
And that there's no conversation, but we're seeing just the opposite. People are so ready to talk about this.
Yeah, well, the problem, or one of the major reasons that I think that abortion continues to happen is because of kind of the hidden nature of it all. You know, I mean, just literally, you know, the child is hidden within the mother's belly and all that, and so it's just kind of that idea that, you know, it's easier to commit evil at arm's length or to never see it actually happen, that sort of thing. It's easier to give the command to somebody else to go over there and commit evil, and it's just kind of, and so whenever you expose it like that, it actually makes a lot of sense to me that not forcing these people, you're obviously asking them, but whenever they actually see it and are face to face with the reality, well, now you can't pretend like it's hidden. Now you can't pretend like you don't know. Now you know, and you have to make a decision.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's exactly what needs to happen, and that's incredibly encouraging to hear that is what's happening, and that it's effective in changing people's minds, because the reality is it's quite dark, and so it is encouraging to hear. So, but some of the language, and you kind of hinted at it already, is around this topic is very misleading. Just, I mean, you take the pro-life versus pro-choice, and that's a very I mean, it's actually quite smart to use that language of choice, because Americans, by and large, value freedom and choice. So that's one of our, you know, leading philosophies and what we really value. So, but one of the other terms that I often hear that seems to me to be very misleading is this reproductive health.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could speak about how this is.
Gosh.
They use it as if it is just another, like another medical procedure, just going to the doctor to get a checkup on whatever. So can you explain why this mindset is just wrong-headed altogether?
Yeah, well, I mean, how can you blame anyone for being confused when right now euphemisms rule the day?
Yeah.
I mean, you have a whole industry talking about things like reproductive health, and I mean, we just released an op-ed on this. It's like emptying of the uterus. It's just like a period. Women's issues, failing to actually address what we are talking about, right? So any lawyer will tell you, he who defines the language wins. Well, this conversation, like you said, is so deceptive, because who's not for reproductive rights?
Yeah.
Who's not for women's right to choose? And we were actually at the United Nations just a few weeks ago, and someone asked us that point blank. During the panel, it was a commission on the status of women on international health, and there was an amazing panel of women talking about abortion from a health risk angle, as well as just needing to support women in better ways. This is not the answer. When we roll into other countries with our colonial, ideas of this will empower you in South Africa if you just have access to birth control and abortion. These women are telling us in all over that they want education, housing, schooling, prisons, not abortion. It's not the end-all be-all. But a boy reaches out and goes and asks a question, and he said, yeah, but I hear what you're saying, but what about a woman's right to choose? And Lila Rose goes, to choose what?
Mm-hmm.
What to choose what? And oftentimes people don't know. They're like, well, I think it dissolves. I mean, the things you hear are the lamest explanations of a medical procedure. And so what we're trying to do is reframe this by enforcing that people talk about what is happening. And it's not too harsh. I've heard people say that, well, isn't it uncomfortable? Yeah, but we're in a world right now, Haden, where you see cops shooting kids. You see drug addicts overdosed. We've all seen these things. Abortion is shrouded in secrecy. It allows the deception to continue. People in my own life have been deceived by it. And I think you're starting to sense people are fed up. Mm-hmm. That if you're going to take a stance on this, I want you to know what it is. And then we can have a conversation. But that's why you'll notice our language is always really intentional, and we always explain what it is. So if anyone's listening and needs practical tips, I think that's one step, which is we have these amazing videos, abortionprocedures.com, super easy. Go see what it is. See for yourself if you can support this.
Yeah, and we'll leave a link in the description for anybody that wants to go there and get a hold of those resources. And I'll leave a link in the description for Live Action and all the resources that we discuss here today on the podcast. I want to switch gears kind of and focus in on kind of how Christians in the church should think about these things and approach these things. But first, I want to give a patron shout out to our patron of the week, Michael. Thanks so much for your support, Michael, and all of our other patrons. We really appreciate your support and helping us continue to do things like these and have important conversations. And so thank you so much. That's the end of my commercial. We're going to get back to our interview here with Alison Centofante. Again, she's the Director of External Affairs at Live Action, which is a pro-life media movement that is exposing the lies around the topic of abortion and Planned Parenthood and things like that are going on. And we've been discussing these things, and now we're kind of switching gears here to discuss how Christians specifically and the church should address these things. So there's some Christians that I know who think that it is kind of their duty to defend a woman's right to an abortion. And so can you explain why this is they're wrong about this, or why this kind of thinking is wrong-headed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen people of all backgrounds defend abortion as necessary. And what that tells women is that in order to succeed, I must pit you against your child. Mm-hmm. That in order for you to live and thrive, you must kill your child. That's not empowering to women. And no woman wants that. And so I think that I'm not sure where they're getting this from, because I think the Bible is very clear that we were made with intention and purpose. We were beautifully and wonderfully made. We were known before we were born. I don't know where they're gathering that in the Bible, but I sense that they've just been infiltrated by this grand marketing scheme that we fund with our tax dollars that's telling us that narrative. So I get it. I think it's easy to absorb that. But you have to, if you're a believer, look, you don't have to be a believer to be pro-life. Mm-hmm. You can come at this from a scientific perspective. You can look at the medical analysis and say, I want to stand up for life. But surely if you're a believer in Christ and the fact that every single life has value and purpose and is made in the image of God, then you should acknowledge that abortion's wrong at all times. Mm-hmm. There's no reason for abortion. And it's an opportunity for us as the church to actually step up and care for people.
Well, you brought up some good things there that I actually didn't put in the questions that I sent you, but maybe we can go off on some tangents here, because I think these are actually more important than what I had. And so, number one, is there actually people who still don't believe that we are talking about a human being when we talk about a fetus, when we talk about a baby?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I mean, it's just so obvious given how much technology has advanced, and we can literally see with our own eyes in an ultrasound where this is living and human. So these people still exist.
Some they'll have a more what they'll call nuanced view, which is they'll acknowledge that it's a life at some point, but surely not at whatever point makes them uncomfortable. So I think that's another good practical step, is when we ask people, okay, so you're pro-choice, where do you draw the line? Is it at birth? Oh, no, not up until birth. Okay, then where is it? And you start moving people towards a direction of acknowledging, like, okay, are you at when a baby can feel pain? That's at about 5 months. Have you seen a 5-month pregnant woman? She's pretty far along. Yeah, maybe then. Or no, that's still too far. And like, we're moving people along the pro-life spectrum. It's not often done in like one foul swoop. Even like, it's this incremental acknowledgement of the humanity of the preborn child. And you're getting them closer to understanding that life begins at the moment of conception. That right at when sperm and egg come together, there's unique DNA. That is no longer mom or dad. That is unique DNA that starts quickly forming. I mean, it's really beautiful into a human being. And so there are still people, I think, that they claim to be a believer, and maybe they'll say, oh, I'm against late trimester abortion, but not first. And you just have to be consistent, and you have to just push back and say, well, why? Why? Where does life begin? And if you don't acknowledge it at conception, you're really going against science and the Bible, I would say.
Yep. Another thing you mentioned was that that we're still funding this with our tax dollars. A lot of Americans are pro-life and against this, and yet they find themselves continuing to pay taxes to a state that is using their money to fund, what many view as genocide. And so, but the question I have is, I don't understand, and I think a lot of Americans sympathize with this, or at least, the pro-life Americans would sympathize with this, that I don't understand how we had a Republican president, debatable, but we'll just assume that he is a conservative Republican for this argument, and a Republican Senate and House after the 2016 election, and yet our tax dollars are still going towards this.
I know.
And we feel very disappointed in what we got for what we gave. And a lot of people felt like they were actually compromising on some of their values to elect this president, and so why have we not seen more done?
Super valid. I'm with you on that. It's incredibly disappointing to see the lack of leadership, the lack of follow through when people make promises to the American people that they will do something. But that doesn't mean we give up. It doesn't mean we stop. It means we remind people that this is our issue. I think people are so afraid of being like a one issue person, and we should all be educated and invested on things that matter. But until we restore this human right, we cannot address the other human rights issues that are happening in our country. Think about it. All of the air is continually sucked out of the room over this issue. And we need to end this. Mother Teresa said, the greatest destroyer of peace in our world is abortion. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be on the other side of Mother Teresa.
No. But it really is fundamental also, because if they're not life, or if we don't view them as human beings, I don't know why we would suddenly view each other as human beings just because we're outside the womb. And so if this is our morale, if this is our moral that we're how we're going to view the unborn, it seems pretty logical that we would view each other the same way, and this is obviously would have extremely negative effects.
That's beautiful. Yeah, why care about, and I don't want to be callous, but I hear all these arguments, and it just, there's no consistency, where it's, why care about the child at the border? Why? Because they're needy, they're dependent, right? Why care about the environment? Well, because we live in it and we're dependent. Use the SLED test, size, your level of dependency, your location should not determine what your value in the world. We don't do that. We don't want to be a society that does that. Yet we treat the preborn child as though, because they're dependent on their mother and society for support, because they're small, because they don't contribute much, that they are not worthy of protection. And I want to be careful, because there's likely women listening that are post-abortive, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge, that there's healing and there's forgiveness, and that you're not alone in this at all. And the devil would like to make you think that you're the only person to go through this, and you're not. And heaven's going to be sweet to meet these babies. I mean, how beautiful. But right now, here on this earth, we need those stories. We need those testimonies of what it was like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was reading an article today about William Wilberforce, and it was the stories of the trial and tribulation of slaves that changed people's view of Black people.
Mm-hmm.
We can't stay silent in the face of injustice. We have to say this is what took place. That's the only way that history changes. And I think it will. The polls are good. They're showing that people are moving more pro-life,
mm-hmm.
particularly young people under the age of 45 and Democrats. The veil is off right now. Look, we're bipartisan. We'll work with anybody. But the Democrat Party supports abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. And every single presidential candidate, no one has spoken out against that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're waiting. I'm actually inviting them all to come speak with us. If anyone would like to have any sort of deviation from the Democrats' platform, please come talk to us. We will highlight it to 4 million people.
Yeah.
But so far it hasn't happened.
So we were talking about if people still actually held to the view that we're not actually talking about a human being. I think that probably is a minority view by now, surely. But what I often hear is that whether they're alive or not, they're not protected by the law. That they're not recognized. I don't know what the argument actually is. Is the argument?
Like this is law of the land language.
Yeah, is it that they're not protected by the Constitution or whatever, therefore they're disposable? Is that really the argument?
Oh yeah, we've heard a lot of that. This is the law of the land. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Well, let's not forget that just because something is legal doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah.
Slavery was once legal in our country. Dred Scott is a Supreme Court case that was wrong. Like, the Supreme Court does not get to be the arbiter of what's right and wrong. Just because something's legal doesn't mean it's right. And right now, abortion is legal in our country thanks to Roe v. Wade and its companion case, Doe v. Bolton, but that doesn't mean it's right. And it doesn't mean it has to stay law forever. So I think that's a cop. I think that's a big cop-out.
Yeah. So you're talking about Roe v. Wade. People often talk about overturning this. How does that actually come about? What would even the process be for seeing something like that even happen?
Sure. So thanks for bringing it up, because there's a lot of misconception that if Roe v. Wade was overturned, abortion would be automatically illegal everywhere, and that's it. And that's not the truth. If Roe v. Wade was overturned, you would see it be returned back to the states, and states would get to decide on abortion law in their state. So some states, probably like Texas, would be very pro-life in their regulations on the industry. Maybe they would outlaw it altogether. Maybe they would just start by ensuring health and inspections of these clinics, which isn't currently happening. Common sense things like making sure women can have access to our ultrasound or a 24-hour waiting period. All of these things that slow this down and help a woman to see the reality of life. That might happen. Maybe they'll end it after heartbeat. But you'll see states like New York codify it into state law and say, we are going to support it through all 9 months. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of shows you why people and states are taking the moves they are now, because in anticipation of Roe v. Wade being overturned, they want to take this time and put it in their state law where they stand.
So overturning Roe v. Wade would not be the end-all, be-all. The pro-life movement presumably would not be satisfied with the decision going back to the states because, like you said, the state of New York and presumably California and other states like this would still have make it legal for this to be done. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's one option. There's a couple different legal options that could happen, but if the conversation won't end, if that's what you're asking, if Roe v. Wade was overturned tomorrow, we still have a job to do.
Yeah.
And we still have to educate and explain and support women. Mm-hmm. If the Supreme Court did want to find personhood and grant personhood to the preborn child, that'd be amazing. Mm-hmm. We would still probably see legal fights, We have organizations out there that are funded by us, like we said. They get $1.5 million every day, Planned Parenthood alone. And imagine what you and I could do with $1.5 million.
Yeah.
How many women I could support, how many kids I could send to school. I mean, it's amazing. And this is an organization, let me say, that doesn't do mammograms when I think it's 1 in 6 women will face breast cancer at some point. They do not provide any sort of fertility treatment for women if you're struggling to get pregnant. Their pap smears are down, their manual breast exams are down, cancer screenings are down. The thing that's up is abortion and our federal funding. So when you think Planned Parenthood, you should think abortion. And I'm so ready for them to be defunded so we can redirect those dollars to better options for women. Mm-hmm. You don't walk into a Planned Parenthood empowered. You walk into it feeling alone and like you have no other choice.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears here and focus on something you've mentioned over the course of this interview, which is the mothers and the women who have actually had abortions and unfortunately suffered through this as well. And so one thing that I hear a lot is that some people who would self-proclaim as pro-life find themselves feeling a tug of wanting to vote, for people who are actually pro-choice, for Democrats, just to be, frank, voting for Democrats because they think that their social and, their policies around economics and stuff will actually provide a better environment for mothers and women, and therefore they won't feel the need to have an abortion and things like that. Now, I obviously think that this is a false dichotomy that we don't have to choose between, but the point is taken. Sometimes I know I get, kind of heated and not excited, but heated about this and kind of focus on the legal aspect of it or the philosophical and moral aspect of it. And I'm sure that can come across as condemning, but that's never been my intention. And so what actually can we do from a social fabric kind of point of view to help women and help and empower women and mothers so that they never feel, because again, we were talking about the deceptiveness of the language, pro-choice. I've never known a woman to have an abortion because she felt like she had choices or options. It's always been like a last resort. She didn't really want to, but she didn't see any way out of it. So what can we do as a society, just human beings coming together? What can we do for these women?
Yeah, you're touching on something that's big right now in politics, and it's tempting. You're seeing a lot of it in the evangelical church, actually, for women to just come alongside these men who promise birth control and free daycare and maternity leave and all of these things, but they are still pro-abortion. And I get it. It is tempting. I get it. But I relate it to this. If this person cannot acknowledge science and life, what else are they ignoring? This, to me, is an issue that is incredibly black and white. And when they try and deceive by saying, well, we got to solve these other things first. We got to lower crime so people want to bring a child into the world. We've got to make better schools and daycare so women want to have kids. Like, in my mind, I just wish I was back there, like I said, with William Wilberforce, when he's talking about ending slavery and people bring up some asinine outside argument like, yeah, but what are they going to do for work if we just free them? Mm-hmm. I mean, who's going to farm? I mean, don't you think we should just make robots to farm first before we free the slaves? Like, no way. An injustice is happening, end the injustice, and we will work on the other things. This is about ending a great evil. Every day, at Planned Parenthood alone, 3,000 babies are being killed. I mean, that's the sense of urgency, and you talked earlier about it, but sheer numbers alone, we should demand that from our politicians and leaders, that this is their priority, to end it. And sure, I'm for supporting women in other ways. We can have those dialogues and those discussions, but you cannot claim to be pro-life and still support abortion. You can't.
Absolutely. So Thanks so much for doing the interview. Coming to my last question here. Of course, if you're listening and you want to listen or watch the bonus segments, you can follow the link in the description over to the Patreon page and watch the 5 more minutes with Alison Centofante. And it's been so great having you on. But before you go, I wanted to ask you, there may be women in the audience listening to this, I don't know, who have either had an abortion or been affected by this some way. And so if you could say one thing to them, what would it be?
You're so loved, you're so known, and nothing surprises God. I get emotional because there's people in my life that have shared it with me and only with me. And so I take it really seriously that what you've been through, and I just encourage you to find someone to talk to about it. It's something to talk to God about. It's something to talk to someone you trust about, because I think the devil wants to use this as an Achilles heel, and I sense he holds on to women in this little thing that can destroy your confidence. And I just want you to know that before God, we're all broken and we've all sinned, and one might feel bigger than another. But before God, we've all sinned. And so we're all in the same boat, and we're all seeking healing, and we're all seeking redemption. And so that's what I would say. And I mean it 110%.
Amen.
To us, gosh, abortion is this big and great evil, and it is. But before God, isn't that the craziest idea, that we're all fallen? That's not something he didn't know he was going to die for? It's amazing. It's grace. It's grace upon grace. So that's what I would pursue you to talk about. And also, there's ministries out there. One right off the top of my mind is Rachel's Vineyard, does retreats across the country. There are amazing books and online podcasts that can help you through healing and thinking through this trauma that took place. And so I don't want to lessen the wall that you have to climb to get there, but you're not alone in it. And there's so many ways to get on the other side of this. And be strong and empowered and sharing. So no one else goes through what you went through, and no one else is deceived like you are deceived.
Well, Alison, thank you so much for being willing to come on and talk about such a difficult subject. It's unfortunate that we even feel the need to have conversations like these. But again, thank you so much. And again, if you're listening, stick around for the 5 more minutes with Alison Centofante in the bonus segment. Alison, thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for joining us, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, leave us a review on the podcast. If you want to watch the bonus segment, 5 more minutes with Alison Centofante, be sure to follow the Patreon link in the description below and become a supporter of our ministry for as little as $1 a month. And thanks so much for joining us, guys. We'll see you next time.